Hello and welcome to another Toll Tickets Tolling in Europe presentation. Today we're going to take a closer look at light vehicle vignettes. So we have explored vignettes in a little bit of detail in one or two of the previous presentations where we offered some comparisons with onboard unit or electronic tolling systems. Also look at the different revenue splits across countries and who is applying vignettes and who is applying a device-based tolling system. And today we're just going to dig a little bit more into just the vignette countries, and as always, just for light vehicles. So to kick off, light vehicle vignettes are in place across several European countries, as we've explored before. But what are they? Vignettes are time-based charges for road use. So you can describe them as a form of tolling, but they are distinct from tolling using an onboard unit or using payment gantries or payment booths, because they charge for a specific amount of time only. They can be applied to both light and heavy goods vehicles, but again, for the purpose of this presentation, we're only going to look at light goods vehicles. They typically cover the primary road network, and that is often motorways, highways, or first-class roads. Very rarely will a vignette cover small local roads. They can come in a physical or a purely digital form, and we'll look at some of the differences there in a sec. They are used instead of electronic distance-based toll charging. So there are no countries where you will find both the vignette and the use of an onboard unit for tolling. It's either or. They are enforced a mixture of manual checks, which still take place on a lot of borders, for example, when you enter a country, but increasingly they are enforced against the license plate of the vehicle. There will be a series of ANPR or enforcement cameras stationed across the chargeable network throughout the country. And finally, they are mandatory. Whenever vignettes are in place, they are mandatory for all vehicles, regardless of how long you spend in a country. Even if you just cross through it and spend a very, very short amount of time there, you must always buy a vignette. And just to have a look at where vignettes are, I've broken this down into the countries that have a physical vignette and the countries that have an electronic vignette. And as you can see, most countries now are either migrating or have migrated towards use of an electronic vignette only. Some countries have had this for a while, but it is also more of a sort of recent phenomenon. The Czech Republic, for example, migrated to electronic vignettes at the beginning of this year, so the beginning of 2021. Austria still uses a combination of digital and physical vignettes. There are both, and there are no signs that they will change that anytime soon. Switzerland, which is still using a physical only, so a sticker vignette, has brought up the subject several times of transitioning to an electronic vignette, but there are no fixed plans for that as yet. The last country still using a physical vignette, Slovenia, is actually due to migrate towards an all digital or electronic vignette as of January next year. So they are building that system as we speak. And then all the other countries you can see, Hungary, Romania, Bulgaria, use exclusively electronic or digital vignettes. So as we've looked in previous presentations at the total revenues and, should we say, addressable market for tolling in general across Europe, so across all systems, what I wanted to do here was just break it down a little bit further into just the vignette revenues. So if we take the 8 countries that we're looking at with a light vehicle vignette, more than 1.7 billion euros was collected for the full year of 2019. We still use 2019 for all of the figures I present because it is the last year where we have a full calendar year of information or results, if you like. It is also the last normal year, as I've mentioned before. So when we look at sort of splits between countries and shares attributable to foreign vehicles, it's more useful to look at a normal year, which hopefully we will return to at some point. So as we can see, Austria is the largest market for light vehicle vignettes in Europe. And as I mentioned, this is a mixture of digital and physical vignettes. Today, it's still mostly physical sticker vignettes that are sold, although the share of digital or electronic vignettes is growing. Switzerland, the second largest market, still offers, as I said, physical vignettes only. One of the reasons Switzerland has quite a large share of the revenue is because, unlike other countries, it does not offer a short-term vignette. So if you travel to Switzerland, you can only buy an annual vignette, and that goes for all vehicles from all countries. Hungary, in at number 3, was one of the first countries in Europe to migrate to digital-only vignettes, and they represent about 15% of this total revenue collected. The Czech Republic, as I mentioned, is transitioning from physical to digital vignettes, or has transitioned, sorry, at the beginning of this year. They're in 4th place with around about 12% of that total. And then, as I mentioned, Slovenia, which is rounds out the top 5, is set to migrate to digital vignette as of January next year. So here what I wanted to show is the proportion of vignette spend attributable to domestic and foreign users. So what I've done is taken the whole 1.7 billion collected revenue that we looked at in the previous slide, taken that all together and then broken it down across all the countries between domestic and foreign. So as you can see, we estimate that roughly 39% of all of those revenues are attributable to users from outside of the individual country. So this is not on a country by country basis, this is taking the total. In some countries, particularly those that offer a wider range of short-term options, the total number of individual vignettes sold is significantly higher than the share you see here. But of course, in most cases, foreign users and non-domestic users typically buy shorter term vignettes, which cost a lot less than an annual vignette. So even though they are buying them in larger numbers, the value is much less. As I mentioned, only Switzerland offers a single time duration for all vehicles. Most countries offer a much wider range of options. So the typical duration is 1 week, 1 month, 3 months, or 1 year. There are exceptions to this. Countries like Austria, for example, offer a 10-day vignette and then a 2-month vignette, and some countries also offer just a weekend only vignette. So it does differ, but this list is more or less accurate for all countries. So finally, why are vignettes important? They're often overlooked when you're discussing tolling or road charging in Europe. The tendency is to look at the countries with much larger collected revenues or much larger networks, if you like, such as France, Italy, etc. But vignettes are a really important part of the mix. Firstly, a lot of the transit countries or countries with transit routes for holiday or business drivers will use vignettes, particularly the likes of Hungary, Czech Republic, Slovakia, all very important transit routes or destination routes as well, of course, but they all have vignettes in place. As I mentioned earlier, the vignette purchase is mandatory for all countries. Unlike somewhere that's using an onboard unit or electronic system, of tolling, there are not specific barriers or booths or anything like that where you would stop on the road and purchase your vignette. There are typically signs when you enter a country, but it's not always clear exactly where the network starts, and as a result, payment points can be easily missed, which will result in fines later for motorists. So perhaps more important to inform drivers up front about where they will need a vignette, and make it easier to purchase those. There are relatively few trusted resellers of vignettes. So each individual country will have a series of resellers for just that vignette, but there really aren't many websites like Toll Tickets out there which offers a very broad coverage of vignettes, as we do. As I've mentioned throughout, the increasing digitalization of vignettes will shift the purchase point away from the border in future. Most vignettes are still sold at the border today, but that will change because as they become more digital, more electronic, it will be easier to purchase them at any point in your journey. So before you reach that destination country, in advance, and of course it can all be done in real time. There's no need to wait for a sticker to arrive in the post. And of course, another result of that is that this digitalization, combined with that lack of device, will create a lot of opportunities for integrating electronic vignette payments with other services. And we at Toll Tickets think that is going to be an important component of the tolling business, the tolling market going forward. As mentioned, we do have broad coverage and are happy to speak to anyone who would like to talk about the potential for integrating a vignette payment into your existing mobility or payment-based service. So thank you for listening. That was a short and sweet trip through vignettes in Europe. As always, all of these presentations are available via our YouTube channel or in various other social medias. In the next presentation, we are going to look in a little more detail at tolling across borders, and this will look in more detail at specific countries and where the traffic is coming from, where there are higher shares of foreign or non-domestic users, and why that's important, what the implications are. And of course, as always, if anybody has any ideas or requests for future presentations, just let me know. Thanks very much.